Tim. Hey, Tim.
Yep.
We record most all the programs, don't we?
Yeah, I've got a list.
Program.
I've got a list, Tom, that I can send you if you'd like.
Please, but I'm going to not be able to be there next Tuesday.
Okay, I'll definitely send you a link.
Thank you. I
Tim,
appreciate it.
my pleasure. Tim, just a reminder, no song today.
I know that you told me that last week.
I
You
know.
fired me last week.
It was just a reminder, friendly reminder. All right, getting ready to go here.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to the Cary Rotary Club.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to the friendliest Rotary Club in District 7710. It's a pleasure to have everybody here mid-September afternoon. As we kick off, I'd like to ask Tim Mannix if he'll lead us in the prayer and the pledge. Tim?
Please bow your heads. My prayer today is wrapped up inside a little poem that I heard a long time ago called The Wish. It says, the slightest breeze that ever blew, some slender grasses wake. The smallest life I ever knew, some other life is flavored. We cannot live our lives alone, for other lives we touch are either strengthened by our own or weakened just as much. My life shall touch a dozen lives before the day is done, leave countless marks for good or ill before the setting sun. This is the wish I always wish, the prayer I always pray. Lord, make my life help other lives it touches by the way. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll finish that song later. A reminder that we've suspended singing for the time being. Tim is going to be very upset because I asked him not to sing, and we all sang in his absence. Tim, I apologize. So just a reminder that we're trying to be a little more vigilant about safety. And so that's the reasoning behind no song. And so I learned something today. I learned two things. First of all, once you start that song, it's really hard to stop. And secondly, next week I'll do the reminder before we all start singing. So thank you. We have a couple of distinguished guests with us today. Eric, I wonder if you can help me introduce them.
Thank you, President Bob. Yes, we do have some guests today. John Hatcher has a guest. John, would you please introduce your guest to the Bob?
I'm honored to guest today is Tim Duffy. He just moved to Savannah Air about a month ago. He was a Rotarian in Texas for 30-some years. He came back here, he went to school at the University of Texas, and he got his study at NC State. He doesn't claim that too much, I don't think. We're glad to have Tim Duffy join us today as a guest.
Welcome, Tim.
Ron Stanton has a guest. Ron?
I do. Thank you very much, Cary. My guest is Chuck French. Chuck is a friend of mine who lives next door, and he's interested in joining Rotary as long as Rotary. So Chuck, just give a minute about himself. Chuck.
Thank you. Pleasure being here. I've always thought about to maybe become a Rotarian at one time. I've known Terry for over 20 years. We always talk about how a organization. I've lived in Cary since 1973. I've seen some changes. Spent some time working with the Wood County Public School System, and spent about 23 years with Carolina Power, now called Duke. At one time, it used to be like animosity, NC State and Union City. So somehow then they got together and it's now called. But thank you very much for having me. And
Welcome, Chuck.
Do we have any other visiting Rotarians or guests today? Thank you. Welcome to our guests, President Bob.
Great, thank you, Eric, and welcome, Tim and Chuck. Great to have you with us today. It's a bit of a laundry list today, so I'll try to move quickly through a variety of announcements that we have. The first is I wanted to remind and encourage everyone about the Polio Plus Challenge that Mary spoke about last week. With World Polio Day coming up next month, October 24th, we're looking to sign up 10 members of our club to contribute $10 a month in recognition of Polio Plus and to help Rotary's efforts to eradicate polio. And when we achieve that goal, the board has authorized an additional $1,000 contribution on behalf of the club. So if you have any questions about how to do that, contact myself, Mary. I know Tim Mannix knows a lot about how to get money into the foundation as well. So please consider that. Also, kind of our September focus was providing support to the Rotary Peace Fellow, Roy Shal Hillel, who spoke with us last week. You'll recall as a Peace Fellow, he's working with a psychiatry practice in Raleigh, working with at-risk children. And he's asked for our contributions of toys, amusements, puzzles, that sort of thing that can support that practice. So you can bring any contributions that you would like to make to any of our meetings this week, the next 2 weeks actually, until the end of September. We'll close that collection effort. And of course, during our social on the 26th, we'll be able to collect those gifts and donations as well. So we want to support him. Currently, we've got a bit of a refugee crisis and a number of Afghan families that are relocating to the Triangle area. So courtesy of Camille Hedrick, we're doing some research and investigation around supporting collection needs to support those families that will be relocating here to the Triangle. We have an opportunity to join with the Downtown Fuquay Club, who's also supporting that effort in order to deliver some much needed supply. So more to come on that. I suppose that all leads to my next is around a training assembly for the district this Saturday on September 18th. There's a virtual training assembly that's going to focus on the Rotary Foundation, right? As Tim is fond of saying, Rotary exists to support the foundation, and the foundation exists to help people around the world. And so we as Rotarians have an opportunity to support the foundation. So I encourage you to participate, register and participate in this district training assembly where you can learn more about how that works and how you can get involved. But you know, it's a unique aspect of belonging to Rotary and a way that we can connect our local efforts to international efforts in a very meaningful way. So please sign up for that. There'll also be a Rotary Leadership Institute on September 24th in Durham at the Tobacco Campus. RLI is a 3-part education program, leadership development program sponsored by Rotary. We've got a number of faculty in our club. Are you, Jim, teaching on the 24th? I know you're a faculty member. Tim Mannix is the faculty member. Mary. So see them or me if you'd like more information about it. It's a fantastic program done over 3 sessions. All 3 will be offered on the 24th. Registration doesn't close tomorrow, so if you're interested, you need to move quickly. Our club social is coming up a week from Sunday, September 26th. So you'll see a sign up genius go out later this week. Renee, thank you for pulling all that together. We'll have an opportunity to sign up for you and family members. We'll provide a box lunch courtesy of Jimmy John's. Free smells, my favorite trademark phrase of anybody. Jimmy John's great sandwiches. We'll come by the pond at Bond Lake. We've got the shelter reserved there. It's just an afternoon of relaxation and fun. You'll remember that one of the things we want to do is try to bring back some of the folks we haven't seen for a while in an outdoor setting. One, hopefully, that we're doing what we can to make safe. And so we've got a sheet, and a number of you signed up to be partners, to contact a couple of folks on a list that we haven't seen of Rotarians for a while. There's still folks available to be in contact with. So again, if as that circulates, you can choose one or two people that you know well, that you can reach out to and invite to that social. I'd appreciate it. We're trying to get as many people re-engaged as possible.
What time is that?
2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Thank you, John, for asking about that. 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock at, I think it's called the Bueller Shelter, but it's right down there next to the pond. Lake. I guess it's Bond Lake. Sorry. Lastly, I do want to mention that there's another volunteer opportunity. Anybody here like bratwurst, beer, Oktoberfest? You might know that the Triangle Oktoberfest is Friday and Saturday, October 1st and 2nd. We as a club had an opportunity to participate in a matching gifts program where we will receive $2,000 to give to an organization of our choice when we staff a brat grilling station. We need 4 to 5 people that are interested on Saturday morning, October 2nd, between 10 and 3. Join Scott Schneider and myself as executive chefs. Well, we'll be the sous chefs, Scott. You all can be the executive chefs. Yep, have some fun. Maybe have an adult beverage, enjoy a brat, and $2,000 is a pretty good match for our club. So let me know if you're interested in that. I see our Sergeant at Arms has been furiously scribbling notes over the last 20 minutes or so. What do you have for us today, Brian?
President Bob, so good to be here. So good. President Bob spelled forwards and backwards the same way. It's beautiful. B-O-B, B-O-M. See how that works? It's beautiful there. And I'm so thankful that my name is not on this list. Thank you, President Bob. So thankful. No one has to call me out. That'll be great. Obviously our president took the embassy early in the year. Probably a good call, because I don't know, when I heard that bell, it looked like he had a full hip twist as he came through and struck that thing. I could be wrong on that. It had a nice ring to it. And then he killed the jukebox right in the middle of God Bless America. I'm like, what in the world? Tim, we actually are doing halfway decent without you. It's hard to believe that. You've been somewhat proud. So hopefully bring that back sometime in the near future. Folks, I'm just not in a fighting mood. I'm just not. But if I were in a fighting mood, I'd hand out some beautiful work like this pretty in pink. That one just beautiful here in the fall scene. So thank you for such a beautiful outfit there. Harold always showing off the sexy legs of work here. Just because he can, right? That's why, because he can. So thankful for that. And we've got a little bit of two sides of the equation here. We've got the Grizzly Adams over here, and we have the Grizzly Adams over here. We've got the high and tight haircut here, and we got this beautiful head of lettuce over here. I mean, it just, the glofness of it just reminds me of Farrah Fawcett back in the day. It's beautiful, yeah. So thankful to see that. It's so good to see our Rotarians, Bill and John and Jim and Ron and Eric and Ernie wearing the attire of the Rotary. Very jealous, I really am. And then Leon sporting this beautiful summer Cuban shirt. I just love it. It's just so good looking. I can't say no. And Charlie's the only one that can really pull off the short sleeves and tie thing. I'm just saying, he is the only one that can do that. The only one. And as I think about so many things in our world that we're faced with, and I think of so many great things that this club has done, and I think of an individual, somebody that's committed 37 years to our community, to our economic vibrance, Howard Johnson. tomorrow night, Cary Chamber of Commerce annual banquet at Coca Booth will be his last official duty as the executive for Cary Chamber. So if you see him, thank you for his 37 years of service and all the great things that him and Patsy and everybody that's been a part of that organization. So thank you there. And then obviously we think about, it's hard to believe, 20 years ago, this past Saturday, September 11th. For me, the year was a year that my youngest, my twins, were born that year. They are now sophomores at NC State. So if you would like to join me, because there are no fines, and reaching your pocket is something to think about for all those who have lost their lives, for the growth of our nation, how we came together in great tragedy to yet show how great we can be despite many things that obviously from the outside perspective were very negative. So very thankful for that. And there's one thing as I sit here and think, as you guys may want to contribute to that, there was no one that was last in today. I think that is a first of all time, at least somebody. I was waiting for Christian Son to walk in the door, and no one was last in. I would love if anybody has any miracle moments that they'd love to share with the group. Any miracle moments? All right. Please do that.
I feel like I do family updates all the time, but our third grandson, Patrick, will be one tomorrow. He wound up with 2 babies during that 20-year that was so hectic for everyone. But anyway, just celebrating his life tomorrow.
Any other miracle moments?
Yeah, I think you announced it last week, but my wife and I just celebrated 46 years as of the 6th, I guess a few days ago. She decided she wanted to cook for the family. I don't know why, on her anniversary, she would choose to do that. She did. We bought a 6-rib standing rib roast without asking what the cook asked what it was going to cost. It was a $335 piece of meat. We finished it yesterday.
Any other miracle moments for anyone online? Not today. Thank you, Sergeant at Arms Brian. There's always a different energy when Brian is here. I think it has to do with the financial aspects of everything he does. But thank you, Brian.
He does have a budget line item.
He does. He does. And he's one of the only that meets or exceeds almost every year. Speaking of members, and Brian talked about those that are here and those that are not, a couple people to keep in our thoughts. Ralph Ashworth lost his brother Max this week, and his funeral is today, so we'll keep Ralph, founding member, in our thoughts. Dorothy Schmelzeitz is recovering from surgery. She's doing very nicely, as we understand, but we'll want to keep her in our that I received from Janet Miller. She says, "Dear Cary Rotary Club, I want to thank you for the wonderful Mediterranean dinner you sent. John and I both enjoyed it very much, John Andrew. And thank you so very much for honoring John with the Dick Ladd Award. He would have been so very proud of this achievement. John was so very proud of his participation in Cary Rotary and told me many, many times he wished he had joined sooner. Please know he thought the world of all of you. Fondly, Janet Miller." I'm happy to share that. I'm also happy to share with you that the family named the Cary Rotary Club and the Cary Cafe as an appropriate place for gifts and remembrances to be sent. And so to date, we've received not quite $3,000 worth of donations in John's memory from 20 different donors. So a number of whom are in this room. So thank you. And I want you to know that John's influence continues. All right, with that, I'll ask Mr. David Coulter to please come and introduce our speaker.
CEO of Consumer Education Services since 2017. It's got to be the virus. Brings more than 30 years of experience in the financial services industry. He oversees all the operational, financial, and community development functions of this company. His skills include particular focus on adapting new technologies to meet the needs of consumers struggling with their financial situation. And for more than a decade, he served as president and chief operating officer of Cary Debt Services, one of the nation's largest and most innovative debt management companies. Just prior to joining CESI, Mike served as chief operating officer of Bay Bank, Maryland Bank, and held senior leadership roles in the areas of commercial banking, specialty financial services, and credit card processing. He earned his BA degree in the University of Virginia in Charlottesville and went on to complete the program for executive manager development at the Duke Fuqua School of Business. He's also a certified personal counselor. He's very involved in many national and local nonprofit community-based organizations and as a member of the Capital City Rotary Club. So please welcome Mike to our club. Mike?
Good afternoon and greetings from the Capital City Rotary Club. For folks on Zoom, I want to apologize in advance. And for the folks in the room, I want to apologize in advance. It's been a long time since I've done an in-person kind of event. And so PowerPoint, there's lots of words on the PowerPoint. That's not going to matter. I mean, if you want to follow along, you can. You've got the document, you can see it. But what I'd like to do today is I'd like to tell you a story. I'd like to have a history lesson. I'd like to talk to you about a legacy. I'd like to talk to you about transformation. And I'd like to give you some examples of what transformation looks like in people's lives and how it matters in their personal life, but also in the economic development engine that is the triangle. And I'm going to do all that in 22 minutes or less. So stick with me, okay? Because I know what happens at about 25 after the hour. So let's start with the story. Well, if we move forward, so CESI is a nonprofit credit counseling agency. We're a 501c3. We've been serving clients since 1998. We're a A+ Better Business Bureau rated company. We provide credit counseling nationwide. We are a member of the National Foundation for Credit Counseling and the Financial Counseling Association of America. We're HUD approved. We're the EOUST, that's the bankruptcy trustee, approved to provide counseling. If you need financial counseling, CESI does it and has done it for 23 years. And that's part of the legacy that I want to talk about. But first, let me tell you a little story. 1968.
Council, yes.
I think most of you remember some part of 1968. So 1968, I was at the beach with my family. My father was an Episcopal priest. My mother was a clinical social worker. That's relevant because, well, you'll see why it's relevant. You don't usually think about folks like that as being deeply steeped in financial capabilities, right? That's not what their forte is. My father was spending the summer preaching at St. Andrews by the Sea, which those of you Episcopalians know is a little Episcopal church that's in Nags Head. And after a summer of being there, we hadn't driven our car. So we're leaving the beach and the car won't start. And it's a very expensive proposition on the Outer Banks of North Carolina to get a Volkswagen Squareback fixed so they can drive back to Roanoke, Virginia. My father pulls out a credit card, a Bank of America card. And he sits down with his wife and his children and explains to us, we're going to take out a cash advance. By the way, if you don't remember, in 1968, there was no Visa, there was no MasterCard. Credit cards were tied to individual banks where you lived. Also a pertinent issue for the story today. But he and my mother sat with my brother and me and showed us how to calculate how much money it was going to cost us in cash advance fees to get home. They thought it was an important enough lesson because they had never used this credit card before. But it was the only way for us to get home as a family. And they wanted us to understand the issue. And they wanted us to understand if we didn't pay that off on Monday and we waited till Friday, how much more it was going to cost us. Any bankers, former bankers in the room on Zoom? Okay. Good. As a former banker, I like to take aim at bankers, right? Okay. 1985, 1986. What's the most important thing that happened in banking in 1985 in the world? If you're from North Carolina, I would expect you to know this. 1985 is when the Southeastern Regional Banking Compact was signed. And to put it very simply, what the North Carolina legislature allowed to happen is they allowed North Carolina chartered banks to branch outside of North Carolina, but kept it illegal to branch into North Carolina. And at the time I was working for First Union, we branched into South Carolina. We took over a bank in South Carolina, and we had First Union National Bank of South Carolina, which was one branch in Greenville. So it was way over the line in Greenville. But that was incredibly important because shortly thereafter, NCNB took over what became known as CS Sovereign. CS Bank of Georgia, Sovereign Bank of Virginia, NCNB took it over, and that was the beginning of super regional banking, which turned into nationwide banking. Very, very important for people who borrow money, because prior to that time, you borrowed from the bank that was local to your community. There was no nationwide bank. There weren't many statewide banks. Unless you banked with JP Morgan Chase, which at the time was called Chemical Bank, there were no national banks except for those big merchant banks. 1986, what's the most important thing that happened? You probably remember it if you were watching the Super Bowl in 1986. In 1986, Sears announces on TV during the Super Bowl that they have launched Discover, the first non-bank credit card in the country, launched in 1986. And out of that proliferated credit card banks. First USA, Capital One, you know the names today. So the entire financing world for consumers changed in 1985 and 1986. And where credit was not used in a regular way, where a preacher and his social worker wife used to sit down and tell their kids how credit worked and how calculate interest and understand how things cost. Beginning in 1985 and 1986, the proliferation of consumer credit happened, and trillions of dollars in unsecured debt flooded and enabled people to do many, many things that we were never able to do before. But it fundamentally changed the way that America operates, fundamentally. And I truly attribute a lot of that to Hugh McCall at NCNB in 1985. So that's the history lesson. So let's move on to the legacy. CESI's mission is that we help people who are struggling with their finances. No big surprise there, right? These are the services that we offer: credit counseling, debt management plans, housing counseling, financial education, pre and post bankruptcy counseling. That is our legacy. But I want to tell you another story. In 98, 25 years ago, I was running a company called Send One, referred to in the marketplace as Cary. Send One was a technology company that provided infrastructure to nonprofit agencies that help them do things, all the commercial things that nonprofits don't do, right? Nonprofits, CESI doesn't pay taxes because we provide education. We have an education exemption. But to do our business, we have to move money, we have to move data, we have to have technology, we have to have systems. And so my company provided all of that infrastructure. And one of the ways that we were trying to grow our business was I was calling on presidents of universities to see if they wanted to get into the consumer credit education business. And 25 years ago, I called on Bruce Polton at NC State. I said, Dr. Polton, think about it. There is not any college in the United States of America that teaches kids consumer credit education. And we've got this proliferation of access going on, and nobody really understands how to calculate simple interest for what something's going to cost you today. What if you pay it back in 2 years, how much did it really cost you? I said, just think about it. You can have a work study program, you can have a, and I went on. Well, I was good then. I could really tell a story back to that stuff. And Bruce Polton, if you know Bruce Polton, Dr. Polton went across the table with me, and he said, Mike, this sounds like a wonderful idea. Do you know that NC State was founded in like blah, 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 blah? And that if I were to go into this, I'd be putting at risk our reputation. No way NC State's going to do this. But I do have this young woman who's recently graduated, finished her doctoral degree. She helped us with our engagement in China. She's a fantastic business person. I'd like to support her. If you will give her the technology, I will be her board chair. And Bruce Polton was the board chair of CESI for 20 years, 15, 20 years. But that's the way that CESI started, was as a startup business that was technology oriented, that tried to integrate consumer information and education into one offering. The industry at the time was an across the desk kind of business, right? It was run by bankers. It really was a community development sort of thing, and a way for them to do giving back to the community when somebody got into trouble. It's part of the social network, I guess, social fabric of the communities. We were trying to create a national model that tracked with the way the banking world was exploding. And so CESI very, very quickly, because of the technology that we provided to them, and because of Diane Chin, who was my predecessor and the founder of CESI, grew dramatically, grew very quickly, very dramatically, to the high point of CESI. Today, we talk with about 300 consumers a day. In 2004, CESI was talking about 800 consumers a day, about $30 million in revenue a year. And I'm not a nonprofit guy, so I don't talk like a nonprofit person, but they were wildly successful in terms of touching consumers. Over the 23 years CESI's been in business, we provided counseling services to more than 2 million people. So we've been very, very successful. When my predecessor decided to retire in 2017, 2018, I just sold a bank and was trying to figure out what my next stop was. And she called me up and said, would you consider, we're doing a national search for my predecessor, for my replacement. Would you consider coming to CESI? I said, sure, let me talk to your board. And I said, tell me what you're proudest about and tell me what needs to happen, right? CESI had created this incredible legacy of serving consumers where they are, not making someone come to you and do it your way. When you are in debt, your enemy is time. Time works against you. And our whole notion was be there for the customer. If they need you in the middle of the night, be there in the middle of the night. We run a 24/7 call center. We always have, right? So it's very different than setting an appointment where you have to go into somebody else's process and meet with them. And they say, oh, by the way, you forgot to bring a budget. You need to go home and come back and make another appointment. That's all working against you. CESI's legacy was be there for the customer and serve the customer where they are. And my board said, Mike, we've been in business 20 years. We've helped millions of people. We've saved $30 million as a nonprofit organization. And nobody knows who we are or what we do in North Carolina. We need you to come in and help us figure out how to have an impact on this region, where we focus all of our energy from a new perspective, transforming our organization to have an impact locally. So about 3.5 or 4 years ago, I think we can go to the next slide. I'm not sure where I am on my slides here. We founded Carolina Community Impact. CCI is a 501c3 nonprofit. It's a subordinate organization to CESI. One of the things that's interesting about nonprofit credit counseling agencies is under IRS Rule 501Q, it's against the law for a nonprofit credit counseling agency to lend money. Obviously, it's a conflict of interest, right? But nonprofit can own another nonprofit that's what it does. And that is what Carolina Community Impact does. It is a lending entity. It's what's called a CDFI, Community Development Financing Institution, that we've been working on for about 4 years to get launched. We've been certified as a CDFI in 2019. You can go to the next slide. And basically, it is a nonprofit bank. So we're focused in 3 different areas. Again, if you think back to what I said about the legacy, right? The legacy of what this organization is. We have a consumer lending function, we have an educational function, and we have a small business lending function. Next slide, please. Our first product was the Community Loan Center of North Carolina Triangle. This is fundamentally an anti-payday loan product, but those of you who happen to have been bankers, Joe Smith, who's a former banking commissioner in North Carolina, really outlawed payday lending in North Carolina about 15 years ago. So that's not our focus here. Our focus with this product was to make an emergency loan available to people, but to underwrite it in a unique way. So we've all heard the 50% of America can't come up with $400 in an emergency. That's really what we were trying to focus on here. How do you integrate education and that demand? And we did this through employers, right? So Baker Roofing is one of my customers on this product. Baker Roofer offers an employee benefit that is the Community Loan Center. And any employee who meets the criteria, which is very similar to that healthcare criteria or their contribution to their 401k or whatever else, you've been here for a year, you've been here a year and a half, whatever their standards are. We underwrite that employment, not the employee's credit. And basically, if somebody's in good standing at an employer, we will lend them up to $1,000 on the spot. And they get a counselor, and they get the same counseling and education and budgeting process that any other consumer we work with gets. So when they're paying me back $45 every 2 weeks in the pay period, they're doing it within a budget. So in a year, when they paid me back in full, they got $45.50 every paycheck that's free cash flow that they can now save, right? Sounds pretty simple. You start small, you use technology, you gamify it, and you get success. But that was our introductory product into the marketplace. We have about 15 employers that use this now. Here's the pitch. If you know any employers who need a product like this for their employees, who really want to do something about financial education for their employees so they stop using their 401k loans and stuff like that, please point them our way. But that was our original consumer product. Next slide, please. You can go ahead. I kind of, as usual, I get ahead of myself. Go ahead, please, the next slide. Okay, so then we get into sort of the small business lending dimension. And I may need to walk away from the microphone just for a minute, but fundamentally, if you think about one thing you should know is 30% of everyone that we talk to at CESI is a self-employed or small business owner. 30%. 30% of 2 million people were small business owners. Guess what? They use their personal financial capability to bootstrap their way into their business. And so when something goes wrong with their personal financial situation, their business blows up. Or vice versa. Their home life blows up because they're trying to do something to the business. But the bottom line is, that's where we've seen a lot of crossover. And that is the legacy that we've been trying to build on ever since. It's how do we take this legacy of technology, disruption, and innovation, unique consumer-focused education, and integrate those two things for small business owners. And in our small business platform, it is the technical assistance, the counseling that makes the difference, because we're integrating business counseling, how to manage inventory, how to manage cash flow, how to do projections, how to access capital, with basic consumer education. How do you build a budget? How do you manage your household to a budget, et cetera? If you think about technical assistance on the business side, when I talk with entrepreneurs and small business owners, they see what it is they want. They know what they want their business to be in the future. What they don't know, though, is how to do those things that I described earlier, the skills around managing cash flow, the skills around forecasting and budgeting, the skills around marketing. And those are all the things we teach them how to do. And because I don't have lender liability, I can demand when I make a loan to somebody that they go through that counseling and education function. Usually we don't have to force folks. They know what they want and they want the support, and they see us as that ring man. They see us in their corner fighting for them, giving them the tools they're not going to get anywhere else. As somebody who ran a community bank for many years, we would not make a loan for less than $200,000, because with the regulatory environment, you just couldn't afford to do it. And if we did, we would make it on the consumer side of the bank, and then you're really relying on somebody's credit score to really drive whether or not you're going to make a $100,000 loan to them. This is a very different, we're on a very different path with CCI. Next slide, please. These just kind of, you can go ahead. These really just kind of talk to the TA or the technical assistance solutions. So you heard a little bit about our consumer strategy. You heard a little bit about our small business strategy. The focus now is for, we've all heard these terms, ecosystems, right? So the ecosystem that is small business lending starts with an entrepreneur, the startup. They don't know how to raise money. They don't know how to do whatever they're going to do. We have found a way to start to help fund even basic startups, working through networks that are well established, like the community college system, Wake Tech, Durham Tech, Launch Raleigh, Launch Durham, organizations that are out there trying to support entrepreneurs. And it's called Kiva Hub. Kiva is a worldwide program. It's a platform that is a crowdfunding model. So someone says, I'm trying to raise money to do X, and give me a bite of $10 or $15 and at 0% interest, and I'll pay you back over time. Ours integrates what's called a trustee. So Wake Tech, Durham Tech, kind of a Shark Tank model, right? Where the reputation is built by the trustee. And so if a trustee says, this person, oh, David Coulter, he's got a great business plan. Absolutely, I'm convinced he's going to be successful. David Coulter's trustee endorsement might get that person their money faster. But if a trustee endorses them, we're going to double the money. CESI is going to double the money through a matching loan fund. So a $5,000 startup loan becomes a $10,000, 0% interest startup loan that requires ongoing technical assistance. So the ecosystem idea here is you help people start up, and then they need our traditional small business loan, and then they're ready for a traditional commercial banking. I cannot tell you how impactful I believe this is going to be in this incredibly dynamic marketplace that we live in right now from an economic development perspective. And what I like to believe, and the story that I tell, is that CESI has gone from being a social services organization to being an economic development organization. That is the transformation that we have made over the last 3 or 4 years, and that we are the path that we are on. So let me give you some examples of people, kind of people that we're helping with CCI. Joe Smith, believe it or not, that's his real name. Joe Smith works for a hardwood floor sanding company in Durham. He's been with them for 18 years. He knows how to sand floors. He knows how to do the business. He just knows nothing about business. And he came to us and he said, hey, look, I want to start my own thing on the weekends. I'm not going to give up my day job because I don't know that this is going to be successful, but I want to give it a try. Will you help me? We helped him write a business plan. We made him a loan. He had cash flow from his regular job. He had no outstanding debt. His income could service the debt that we made him of $15,000 to go buy his own machinery, to give him some working capital, and to do some marketing. Joe has not missed a payment on his loan. That's an example. Sounds small, but in the world of COVID, how many people have been in a job they hated doing for so long, or working for somebody else? They want to do their own thing. They know how to do it. They just don't know what to do. Joe's a great example. Another example is somebody that I actually had to turn down. He had a very, very successful landscaping business. He had terrible personal credit. His personal credit couldn't support a loan. And so we sent him to fundamental education around building a business plan. And we put him in the Kiva Hub. And he raised $10,000. We matched it, he got $20,000. He got the loan that he was looking for us originally, and he's getting the education that he wouldn't have gotten if we just made him a loan. And the last example I'll give you is a woman, she's a veteran. She's an African-American woman. She's 50 years old. She's kind of the classic target market for us because she's someone who's been excluded from the traditional financing models on the personal side, on the business side, for all her life. She works for a logistics company. She's been with them for 22 years. She has multiple contacts, and the owner of the business said, "You're so good at what you do, and I've got so much business. If you started your own, I'd give you some contracts so you could get started." She had no idea how am I going to borrow $25,000 to buy a box truck? How am I going to get business insurance? How am I going to get a business plan? How am I going to pay for fuel? How am I going to pay for insurance? Wow, could I hire some people so that during the week while I'm working at the logistics company, they could be driving the truck and I drive it on the weekends? So all that came together in the business plan, and she got a $40,000 loan to start a new business that employs 2 people that otherwise would not have jobs. That is the kind of transformation that we are trying, that is the impact that we're trying to have in the Triangle. Now, we're not Apple. And, you know, we're not trying to create those kinds of jobs. But what I would share with you is that if we're going to keep having massive employers and massive growth in the area, we need more and more small service organizations. And we are going to help create those service organizations in the future for those people that otherwise they'd be working with that other guy who owns a sanitary. So I've prattled on a long time, I know, but I hope you can see that we've gone from a very, very important, and we've not given up on serving consumers in CESI, trust me, but nonprofits too can take advantage of technology and impact and trying to have a broader vision. And I just commend to you that there's a lot of good organizations out there trying to do the kinds of things that we are. And if you know of businesses who need help from us, please let me know. If you know individuals who need help from somebody like CESI, let me know. But I just really appreciate the chance to tell our story. Any questions? I'm glad. Anybody wants to talk about Affordable Care Act, care, eviction prevention, any of those kinds of things? Glad to handle those because we do all that stuff too.
Any thoughts on educating folks who are not yet installed? Maybe even down to teenage level.
So your question is, do we do any education to help people stay out of trouble?
That or strategies to deal with that population?
Yeah, so we do a fair amount of that, particularly on the housing side. We are the largest participant in the state's program called CPLP. If you're not familiar with it, Community Partner Loan Program. It's run by the North Carolina Housing Finance Authority. It's for first-time home buyers. And we probably put about 50 people a week through that education program. And about 10 of them decide to go on and buy a house. Because it really is about saying, look, I have a guy named Greg Smalls who teaches that class. He reaches in his, he's a sergeant major from the Army, retired, and he's preacher on the weekends. And he pulls out a bag of dirt. He says, "This is my dirt. Let me tell you what it takes to get my dirt. If you want dirt, there's a lot you have to do." And he goes through the whole thing. And then it is an important education process for people that have this vision about wanting a home, but really may not understand what that means. And because it's not just about buying the home, right? It's about maintaining the home. And how do you do that? And how do you plan for that? And so we do a fair amount about that. And trust me, if you've got a child or a grandchild who lives in North Carolina, you should call me about CPLP, because what I will tell you is, if you meet the income requirements, which is less than $80,000 in Wake County in a household of 2, the state of North Carolina will give you a second mortgage to pay down payment assistance on up to a $250,000 loan of $60,000 that you don't pay back until you sell the house. So if you don't ever sell the house, guess what? You don't ever pay back the loan. So, I mean, there's a number of programs that are out there that can really help, but it's all about in the context of, do you really understand what you're doing? That's a great question. Thank you.
I think we got time for maybe one more question. If
Sure.
anybody has it.
Yeah.
Online or. Okay. Well, we really appreciate you coming in and talking to us about the financial options that are available out there for people who maybe wouldn't have options with the standard banking system. And Jerry Miller, who's one of our Rotarians, is an artist, and he put these landmarks. He drew these landmarks of Cary, and we'd like to give you this in appreciation for you coming in and talking to us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, thank you very much. A message, particularly in terms of small business and Kevin, that fits really well with one of our areas of focus around economic empowerment. So we look forward to running across you again. All right, well, quickly, I'll move through some celebrations. I see one here that was not noted earlier, that probably should have been. Says here, Brian Reed has a birthday on September 18th, next Saturday. So happy birthday, Brian. Online, I also see that Paul Carr is celebrating a birthday in 2 days. I guess that's Thursday. Happy birthday, Paul. And when you see Billy Sutton, help him across the street. His birthday, he's celebrating his birthday next Sunday, the 19th of September. So happy birthday, Billy. A couple of Rotary anniversaries that it's Deuces are wild. Darren Gay and Blair Hatcher both celebrate their second anniversary as Rotarians on the 17th. Don Finkbeiner and Pat Hudson both celebrate 22 years as Rotarians on September 14th. And Tony Withers celebrates 22 years with this club on top of 10 years elsewhere on the 15th. I guess that's tomorrow. So if you see Tony, congratulate him. Next week's program, the Bombshell Brewery will come with a program. And I keep asking David if they'll please bring samples, because it'll match up well with our lunch of chicken parmesan over rotini with broccoli. It really should have been with the barbecue thing. We'll look forward to that program. And in 2 weeks, we'll have a program on All on the Line Carolina, which is a group that is paying attention to redistricting in the state. And they'll give an update on where the legislature is at in drawing some lines. So look forward to that. I want to thank you again, Mike, for joining us. Thank you, John, for inviting Tim, and Ron for bringing Chuck. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. We look forward to having you with us again. And as we conclude our meeting, I'll ask Pat Hudson, our anniversarian, if she'll lead us out.
The four-way test of the things we think, do, and say.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Can anyone tell me who are the people associated with schools in the Rotary Club? Camille?
Myself and Bill Fletcher. Darren Gay belongs to My Business Alliance. Kristen Sutton belongs to My Business Alliance. Darren and Kristen are actually parents at my school. And I feel like there's somebody else who's a parent at my school, but I can't remember who it is.
So are you a teacher or an advisor or?
I'm the principal of Green Hope High School.
Principal, Green Hope.
Yes,
So
sir.
Where's that off now? Is that off?
So it's off High House, but it's kind of between High House and 55.
Okay.
The address is Carpenter Upchurch. You planning on visiting? You're gonna come volunteer? I'm gonna give you a heads up on this.
What are these? What's volunteering? That isn't the reason I asked, but what are you talking about?
If you volunteer, you have to volunteer for a purpose. We have to know why you're coming and vet you, give you a background check, criminal check, all those things. Make sure you know you're not a criminal. It's a rule.
Yeah. So in other words, the person who wants to volunteer sets the criteria, or do you set the criteria?
People above my pay grade set the criteria.
Oh, I see. Okay. In other words, there's a list of things that should be volunteered for. Is that the idea?
Along that line, we have a Rotary Interact connected to
Oh.
our Rotary on this campus.
Well, that's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Good active club, is it? And yeah,
Yes, very active.
yeah. How many kids? Do you have any idea?
I don't know off the top of my head. I never know. A bunch.
Yeah, yeah. Because where I was before, we had two active interacts. It was great. The kids really were great.
Well, I can't say there's one at every high school, but there are a bunch of them. They're all over.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, good.
That's how I met Tim Carr. I was at Panther Creek.
So,
Also Ernie.
okay. So they work at those schools?
No,
you
they're
say?
in our Rotary, and they were
Oh.
interacting with the Rotary Interact at the high schools.
Oh, okay, good. Lot to learn.
Mhm.
Yeah, have to get back to the regular meetings, I guess. Yeah. So do they have science clubs and things like that at the school?
I'm trying not to laugh. Yeah.
Why do you laugh?
So we're very close to Research Triangle. We're Science
Oh.
Central.
So
Yeah,
you
we have a
have
lot of
you
science.
have the greatest people in the world talking.
We
Yeah.
actually do, yes. Our
Wow.
parents work at Research Triangle, or they're doctors, or they're like a lot of other people too, but this is a high science area. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Natural sciences, technical
All
sciences.
sciences. We have an
Okay.
incredibly active environmental club. We have every kind of science thing you can imagine we have on this campus.
You say your school campus you're speaking of.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how many students, if you don't mind this interview?
2069.
2069.
Mhm.
Boy, that's, most of them come by bus or they get driven in or?
It depends. I'd say give or take on any given day, 400 or 500 by bus, 400 or 500. Their parents bring them, the rest drive themselves. A few walk, a few ride bikes. I'm
Yeah.
making up these numbers, but that's about right.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, that's interesting. Natural Science Club, you say they have?
All kinds.
Okay.
We have
But I
about
mean,
100 clubs.
Yeah.
Give or
In the-
take.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they meet once a
So-
week, once a month, or,
It depends on what the club decides.
oh, okay. Good. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. That was,
So why are you asking?
well, I'm just interested, I'm doing a lot of work with the North Carolina Bluebird Society. And it's not only bluebirds, but cavity nesting birds and habitat and things like that. And I've always been interested in perhaps, we have a lot of people my age in this group, and we need a lot of younger people, and we need to get some younger folks who are probably better educated in some of these habitat situations than we are. But no, just to involve younger people in our organization. And so, and also for birds in general, you might say. So I don't know if there's any room for that or contacts I could make with students. You know, I know students are so busy with so many things, and that's what we usually find. And so that's the story. I just wanted to see if I could involve students rather, along to, as people that might move along with time and take these interests up. Not specifically, I know that as time goes on, people's attitudes and minds change and thoughts, but just trying to start them off with people who have a great appreciation with a species of birds, especially cavity nesting birds and so on.
So we have a science department chair. And what we might do is let the two of you talk, but our clubs are student initiated. Other than the ones where they're like competitions or honor societies, things like that.
Yeah,
Our clubs are student initiated. So the student who has the interest finds a teacher who will sponsor that club. And then they have to ask for club approval. So we would have to already have someone who cared about bluebirds, right?
yeah.
And who was interested in that. And then they would have to go find a teacher to be their sponsor, so that, because that teacher has to go to all their activities.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where that would start. So what I can do is you can email me, and so if you can I just tell you my email?
Yes, please.
Okay. C as in Camille, HED RICK
HED
RICK
CHEDRICK
at WCPSS.net.
WCPPF.net. What's that last one again?
I just
Excuse me.
typed it into the chat.
WCPPF.
So I just typed it in the chat.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
I don't even
it's
put my
Wake
glasses.
County Public School System.
Okay.
So you can copy and paste it. So you can email me the interest on your end, and I can see if there's interest on our end.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if there is or isn't. There's no telling on any given year, you know,
Yeah.
what happens. And clubs, we renew them every year. So there's just no
Yeah.
telling, except for like National Honor Society, that's already there. You know?
You know, I was looking more rather than perhaps to start a club, to join the greater picture of conservation with our area of conservation, you might say.
So we can look and see if this is something one of our organizations can participate in that already is true. And I think starting with the science department chair, that might be a good place to start. I can ask him what he thinks. If this
Yeah.
is an activity one of our organizations could participate in.
Okay.
So I just have to get the contacts together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me kind of work on it on my end and thoughts, and then I want to. There it is, right there.
Mhm.
Copy.
That's very thoughtful.
Well, this is an organization that began back when bluebirds were almost wiped out of this country.
Mhm.
And it was only people who got together and provided nest boxes for them. You may know this story, living down here where there are so many bluebirds now, and has brought them back to their way off the lists as far as being of concern anymore. And it's only because people, and in doing that, people got out and they learned about them, and they learned about other birds, and they learned about habitat and things like this. And I see it now that we need to have a greater reach as far as, well, there are so many concerns today with the conservation movement, you might say, but I see that our organization must have a greater reach with other species and so on, and being concerned with our habitat. I mean, if you look right around us here, it's changing by the minute, you know,
Mhm.
so on. So it's just that, and we need younger people.
Mhm.
And many of them are interested to the degree that you're allowed when you have homework and you have school and sports and so on. But if we could make some sort of a connection or a contribution to the knowledge of young people, that's what we really need to do.
Well, you never know. So let's just see, let's start and see what we find out. How's that sound?
Good. All
Okay,
right.
you're gonna email me?
I will. I just copied this off, and I'm going to
All right.
paste it. I'll paste it somewhere on a Word document, I guess.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, thank you for your time.
All right.
I know you're very busy, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
But this is helpful to my kids, so you never know. I appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
All right,
right,
good
take care,
meeting,
guys.
Bob. Good
Yeah, it
meeting.
was- Yeah, I think we got some opportunity here.